Welcome back to Not So Different. It's good to have you here. Not So Different is a podcast where we explore remarkable lives through lens of neurodiversity. And that's done without diagnosing, labeling, or rewriting history. Instead, we ask, what can we learn from the way someone experienced the world? But first, you know what time is. It's our guessing game. So I will give you 3 clues, and I would like you to try to guess who are we going to talk about today. Ready? Clue number 1. She published every book that appeared in her lifetime without using her real name. Instead, she was hiding behind phrases like by a lady or by the author of Sense and Sensibility. Clue number 2. Although she was one of the most influential writers in English literature, she published only 6 full-length novels, all of which remains classic today. Clue number 3. She once said, "Let other pens dwell on guilt and misery." And instead, she turned every life into extraordinary insight of a romance she never experienced in her life. Have you guessed it? Yes, today we're talking about Jane Austen. And as this episode will be podcast in February, I was thinking about Valentine's Day. Now, that time of year where we all are encouraged to reflect on love, connection, and the messy, should we say, but beautiful world of relationships. So, choosing Jane Austen today feels little like offering you a Valentine's gift from our team to you. But also, I wanted to use Jane as a springboard for a deeper conversation. Love and relationships among people with neurodivergent needs. And sometimes, understanding other people feels like trying to learn a language no one ever taught you. What someone says and what we think they said can be 2 very different things. And this can make the conversation very confusing. Have you experienced that? And there are also the hidden rules of relationships, the tone of the voice, the small hints, the look, the pauses. Things many people notice automatically, but neurodivergent people may not. And that's okay. It just means we experience the world differently. So on top of that, things like touch, loud sound, strong smell, or being too close to someone can feel uncomfortable or overwhelming for neurodivergent people. So being in a relationship can become a mix of many feelings and many signals happening at once. So today, using Jane Austen's sharp and gentle way of observing people, we are going to explore what can make relationship easier, what can make them harder. Because there isn't one right way to love. There are many. So before we explore Jane Austen's ways of seeing the world, I want to take you into her early life. So the environment that shaped her, the relationship that grounded her, and some of the patterns that today may resonate with autistic traits. Jane Austen was born in 1775 into a large, lively family. There were 8 children in total. And that's a lot of noise, isn't it? A lot of personalities and a lot of social dynamics happening all at once. Yet, even with this busy household, Jane formed one truly central relationship, and that was with her older sister, Cassandra. Cassandra undoubtedly was her anchor, her safe person, her emotional interpreter. And we see this interpretation in some of the letters they've exchanged. For example, Jane explicitly said she writes to Cassandra as she would speak to her in person. I'm going to quote here, "I have been talking to you almost as fast as I could the whole of this letter." This suggests an unfiltered, very natural communication style. And this kind of openness is something many autistic people experience only with someone who feels emotionally safe. It's a special relationship dynamic. But here is something important, and I want you to really hear this. For many autistic people, a conversation doesn't end just because the words stopped. You may have leave the room. You may hang up the phone. You may think the discussion is finished. But for the autistic person, the conversation may continue internally or even out loud for minutes, hours, sometimes days. And this is called external processing. It can look like talking through a situation out loud in an empty room, or replaying a conversation while driving, under the shower, and so on. Rehearsing what they wish they would say. Reacting to a sensory or emotional overload verbally, or working through tiny social nuances out loud. So it's not talking to themselves. A neurodivergent brain often carries far more sensory and emotional data from a social interaction than a neurotypical brain. Let me explain what that means. When a neurotypical brain talks to someone, it automatically filters out lots of information that are not important. For example, a neurotypical person may not even notice a texture of the clothes, a shape of the eyebrow, or the buzzing light above the head. The neurotypical brain decides this is not important for the conversation. I will ignore it. That sounds dreamy, right? But for many neurodivergent people, the brain doesn't filter these things out. Instead, it takes all of the information at the same level of intensity. So, during one simple conversation, A and D brain may notice the smell of the perfume, the roughness of the chair, the brightness of the light, the movement of the person's eyebrow, and the body language behind the words. And all of these arrives at once. And it's not being too sensitive, it's too much data to process. So while a neurotypical person may walk away thinking, that was a nice chat, a neurodivergent person may walk away thinking, my head is full, I need time to sort all of these things out. And this is why many neurodivergent people will need the space to think, moments alone to process, time to figure out what the other person actually meant. It is not being rude, it's not being distant, and we're not isolating. It's simply how the brain works when it receives everything instead of only the key parts. So when you see your neurodivergent friend, or your child, or partner talking out loud even though no one else is around, don't think they are odd. Think about the process behind it. Now, here's the part that's really important in relationship, either romantic, familiar, or platonic. External processing can create misunderstandings, I know. Because sometimes the autistic person genuinely believe they said something to you, when actually they only said it to the internal version of you, inside the mind. So it can create misunderstanding. I'll give you an example of a situation. I told you to bring me my meal. You never told me that. Yes, I did. I remember saying it. And they did say it, just not to the real physical you. It was said in the car, in the kitchen, or after you hung up the phone. The intention was completely genuine. The communication simply didn't make it into the external world. And this isn't forgetfulness, it isn't carelessness. It's just the brain doing its processing in a different space on a different timeline. So, if you love someone who communicates this way, don't assume bad intention. Don't assume that they ignore you. Instead, try this. Gently ask, did you say that to me directly, or were you thinking it through on your own? Remember, the neurodivergent brain may be doing double or triple the processing yours is. So, Going back to Jane Austen and her romantic life. What was her romantic life like? Did it look like one of her novels? Jane Austen did experience love, or something close to it, but her romantic life did not unfold like the stories she wrote. Her novels gave her characters the freedom, the respect, the financial stability and emotional clarity that she herself was never allowed. The best documented romantic connection in Jane's life is with Tom Lefroy, a young Irish law student she met in late 1795. In her letter to Cassandra, she wrote that she felt something real. She experienced vulnerability, sadness and excitement. So the two met at Christmas ball. They danced, they flirt and spent time together frequently. And they both were in the 20s, where the attraction seemed genuine and mutual. So why it didn't last? Well, family and money. Tom was expected to marry someone wealthy enough to support his legal career, and Jane was not able to satisfy this expectation. One of the most striking things, in my opinion, about Jane Austen's letters around Tom and her splitting up is what's not there. And there is no dramatic heartbreak, there is no emotional collapse, no poetic despair. So how would you make sense of that? Two young people that want to be together but can't. Wouldn't you expect some drama in the background? Well, I'm thinking that many autistic people respond to reality in a very literal and pragmatic way. So if the social rule of the world is you can't marry without money, and Jane had no dowry, then the romance becomes impossible by definition. And for autistic people, once a rule is understood, and especially a structural rule such as economic, class, or logistic, the emotional expectation falls away. Not because they don't feel, but because the logic is clearer than emotion. This is the rule, I accept the rule. Autistic people often feel intensively, but not in a socially visible, let's say, theatrical way that people would expect. A lack of drama doesn't mean a lack of emotion. It means internal processing, private distress, maybe quiet disappointment, and acceptance rather than the protest. And one more thing, ND people sometimes prioritize purpose over romance. Many neurodivergent women, historically and today, feel more drawn to their work, the special interest, the creative mission, the intellectual projects, than to traditional romantic script. And Jane Austen's greatest love was her writing. She treated her book as her children. Marriage, especially in her era, meant giving that up. And Jane was confronted with that choice one more time during, shall we say, one-night engagement. In 1802, Jane received a marriage proposal from Harris Pickwitter, her friend's wealthy brother. At that time, her and Cassandra were actually staying in Witter's house, and she accepted the proposal for one night, and then rejected it by morning. So Harris would give her financial security, will give her comfort, stability, and social approval. But by the next day, she had reversed her decision. And when you look at Cassandra's letters, how she described Jane during that night, you will see exactly what we've been talking about through this episode. The ND pattern of prioritizing logic, safety, and internal truth over emotional performance. Jane described the night as overwhelming. She didn't sleep. She ruminated. She replayed her decision again and again. You can almost imagine her alone in the room, speaking out loud to the internal Cassandra, working through every scenario, every consequence, every sensory and emotional detail. And for many neurodivergent people, the kind of late-night external processing is the moment when the clarity finally emerges. I wonder if you've been in a situation where in the heat of the moment you said yes to something, maybe to please someone or to be kind, but actually later on that decision didn't feel right. And for Jane, the clarity was unmistakable. She knew what marriage meant, the likely end of her writing life, the loss of her creativity, autonomy, her routines, her intellectual space, the quiet hours that allow her to observe life so precisely. And she didn't want a marriage based only on the financial safety. She wanted connection, shared thinking, emotional depth, the very qualities she gave her characters, like Lizzie, for example, from the Pride and Prejudice. So, she walked away, choosing autonomy. Jane and Cassandra left Briggs' house the next morning in tears, returning to their brother James. They begged him to take them back to Bath immediately. This is one of the few moments in her biography with clear emotional intensity. It suggests Jane felt distressed and embarrassed, and that she wanted to escape from the situation as quickly, as quietly as possible. And this is important because Bath gave Jane home at this time. This perfectly aligns with the ND lens we've been exploring. The internal distress, the quiet processing, the need to retake self-space, the avoidance of a social confrontation, and the likely exhaustion from the sensory and emotional overload. Jane didn't perform a heartbreak, but she absolutely felt something. During her early time in Bath, Jane often attended the Theatre Royal or Sydney Gardens. She walked the crescents and observed the busy social life, observing the rituals and behavior that later inspired the scene in Persuasions. Now that reminds me very much of Alfred Hitchcock. Remember how we were talking that Hitchcock liked to go to the cinema just to observe the reaction of the audience? Jane Austen died after a long and painful illness that lasted nearly a year. She was just 41 years old. Her symptoms, exhaustion, vomiting, fever, and change in skin color have led doctors to speculate illnesses as Addison disease, or even accidental arsenic poisoning. She spent her final weeks in Winchester, where Cassandra cared for her constantly, and in the early hours of July 1817, Jane died gently in her sister's arms. We still don't know for certain what took her life, only that she faced it with humor, dignity, and a quiet strength. So before we finish today's episode, let's look at what Jane Austen helped us to understand about relationship. Number 1. One safe person can change everything. Jane had Cassandra, the one person she could talk to. She was open to. She trusted. Number 2. ND people often choose logic over drama, and that's not cold, that's clarity. When Jane faced love that couldn't work, she chose sense, safety, and truth. Many neurodivergent people make relationship decisions based on facts first, not because they feel less, but because they feel deeply. Number 3. Conversations don't always end when the talking stops. Neurodivergent brains can keep processing for hours, replaying, talking out loud, or finishing the conversation later. And it isn't strange. It's how we sort emotions, memories, and tiny details. Number 4. ND brains take in more information, not less. While neurotypical brain filters out things like smell, light, noise, or small movement, neurodivergent brains often absorb everything at once. And that can be tiring. So, ND love sometimes needs quiet space and predictability. Number 5. Check-ins prevent misunderstandings. Because ND people sometimes say the things to the internal version of you, not the physical you, clear communication helps. Remember our example? Did you say that out loud, or were you thinking it through? Number 6. Love from autistic or ND person is real, but it may be expressed differently. And this is important, as autistic love isn't always shown through big emotions or romantic gestures. It may look like fixing something for you without you asking for it, sharing special interest with you. Think about children coming back to you over and over again with the same question, with the same toy, with the same memory. Giving you space. Showing up quietly and consistently. Remembering tiny details you forgot you've mentioned. It may not look like a movie romance, but it's deep, it's loyal, and it's steady. Because what is not so different for all humans, no matter our brain type, is the need for connection without judgment. Thank you very much for being here with us, and hopefully I will see you shortly.